I have that accessibility policy where I give free PDF copies of my books to anybody who can't afford it, because I know what it's like not to have access to resources based on your financial situation and stuff like that, right? So you play the two truths and a lie game. I often play the if I was in charge of the world game.
Welcome to Project Candor. I'm your host, Jeannie Anderson. This is the show where ordinary people share the unexpected stories that shaped who they are. Stories about turning points, about hard seasons, and about what it took to keep going. You're going to want to hear from today's guest. Our guest today is Kerisma Vere. Kerisma Vere is a holistic wellness coach and author whose work was shaped by navigating trauma, mental health challenges, and addiction firsthand. She turned those hard-won lessons into a philosophy of compassionate, non-prescriptive change, the kind that actually holds. She's the author of The Light Switch Myth and its companion journal, Ways I Showed Up for Myself, and the creator of the course From Pressure to Path. Kerisma, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeannie. It's so nice to be here.
So the way we go is I first ask you some questions, and we transition to play our two truths and a lie, and then I'm ready to go with questions if you're ready.
You betcha.
Okay. You've described your path into this work as coming from lived experience rather than a textbook. Taking me back to an earlier chapter of your life, what was it actually like to be in the thick of it before you had any of the language or framework you have now?
I sort of see my life in two parts. And one, there was the getting out of home finally and sort of hitting the world and doing my best to survive and try to sort of work on things. And I actually kind of got somewhere with that, or so I had thought. And then everything came crashing down to me, and I had a pretty much a full nervous breakdown, and discovered that I really had to become willing to do things differently. And so that was in 2018. And everything that I've learned since then has been basically enhanced what I already know, but it's so different. And, I can actually say that breakdown ended up being a breakthrough, because I've learned things that I wouldn't trade, even though I wish that those lessons had come along in an easier way. It's just that, yes, my willingness to accept help, my willingness to put the relationship with myself first, and my understanding of unconditional self-worth, and learning how to treat myself with unconditional love and positive regard has taken the priority in my life, and basically informed all of the work I do with other people and the books that I've written.
Okay. Well, I wasn't intending to ask you this question, but I joke a lot when I get under stress about, I'm having a nervous breakdown. What does that feel like?
Yeah, well, I think we've all, been there a little bit, but the difference for me in when I'm referring to that as a breakdown, and everything, I literally shattered inside, and I actually got rather acute amnesia and couldn't remember really who I was, who had been. We draw on our experiences every single day, whether it's washing the dishes or interacting with a loved one. The things that we've learned, the who we've been, how we got here, all really plays a big part in how we move through the world. And I no longer had access to any of that. I wasn't really able to function. I wasn't able to go to the store. I didn't remember how to cook. Basically, I could kind of get out of bed and sit there all day. And I did manage to do a few things to try to get some help and that, but pretty much for a year and a half, I used the word comatose because I had a flat affect. I couldn't even listen to music or anything like that. Having conversations with people was exceptionally difficult. My brain just was not working the way that it ever had, and I was in a state of panic pretty much 24/7 for about 16 for about 16 months before I was able to bring it from like acute panic into like acute anxiety. And then from anxiety, we brought it down a little bit more and continued to heal. So, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but what had happened was I had still been fairly dissociative up to that point in regards to the trauma that I had been through when I was younger. And it all came back and it flooded me, and it did so in such a way as to completely overwhelm me. Sometimes the way I describe it to people is a little bit like a brain injury, right? Because it's just, and somebody who had relied on using my brain to get me through everything, it was just like a whole new way of being. But yeah, it was my level of functioning was just not there, right? Like it was just not there. It took an awful long time to rebuild from that place. So that was why I called it a breakdown.
Well, that sounds like a breakdown of magnitude. So thanks for sharing that. But that took what I'm trying to count in my head. That was maybe 2.5 to 3 years of recovery.
Well, it happened in 2018, and like yeah, the first year and a half was still rather intensely horrible, and and then I think it started to kind of progress from there. There was a relapse after the breakdown. There was a relapse, so that probably aggravated situations, but like that was kind of like the only way I knew how to cope with what was going on. So as I got help, I slowly did the harm reduction approach to just slowly using less of the substances and bringing in more of the healthy tools. And I would actually say it was really probable, like in 2023, I finally got clean again. And my mental health had been getting better, but until I was actually able to completely get clean again, it was still fairly problematic. And then I had emergency surgery with my colon ruptured, and so that was rather traumatic, and it sort of actually made me dissociative again because it was so sudden, and I almost died, and that took 3 months of physical recovery and probably closer to 6 months of more mental emotional recovery from that. But later in by the beginning of 2024, I was in a lot better condition than I had been in, and probably even better in a lot of ways compared to before the breakdown, because now I had new tools, new understanding, and had developed a new relationship with my self. But yeah, things didn't really get they didn't really get stabilized mentally or emotionally until probably very early 2024.
Now, this is a personal follow on to that first question about what it felt like. Were you all alone in this? Or did you have support system? How did you get through this?
No, I was all alone. That's the thing, and that was sort of partly what was leading up to the breakdown. I had my friends had been falling away because I was starting to see the world through the lenses that I had when I was a kid, and I was perceiving rejection and judgment and all kinds of things, even when it wasn't there, probably. So I wasn't navigating relationships well at all. I have a relational trauma as part of my history, and so I had pretty much, and I actually had one good friend who I had known for 30 years, but in the state I was, I kept forgetting that I had her. So, and she worked full time and lived about an hour away. So I really only talked to her every 4 weeks or so, I think. But she was there, and that did make a difference. And actually, as I started to recognize more that she was there, I'm so grateful because her love and support was so unconditional. It's like she let me come over, and I didn't have to be able to communicate or anything like that. And she just accepted me in the state I was. And the fact that she had known me so long was really grounding for me because it gave me something sort of to work back towards, because like it reminded me of who I had been just to be with her. But other than that, no, I was on my own. And the first attempts I made at finding help did not go very well. But eventually I hooked up with a really good therapist who was then able to kind of help me for the next 8 years.
Right. It is hard to do anything without a support system. So kudos to you for getting through that. That's quite a bit. And were you in the hospital a lot during this breakdown, or were you at home?
In 2018, yeah, I did go into the hospital, and unfortunately, like the when I checked in, they left me in this tiny little room for about 8 hours. Then they put me in a bed and they ignored me for 5 days, and I was that just aggravated the situation so much more. And then they sent me home, with a nurse was going to check up on me twice a week or something, and I was quite convinced that one of the medications I was on, one of the antidepressants I was on, was actually like exasperating things. So I kind of made a decision, like I'm going back and I'm not leaving until they, help me. And so I went back and the same thing happened. Only this time I was left in the hallway, and it's with somebody with acute PTSD being left in a very busy hallway for 5 days was not a good situation. So I actually got into the psych ward and this other place called Crest on the same day, and I had to choose. And the place called Crest, you got your own bedroom. So I went there, but it was just a 2 week kind of thing. So they did help me stabilize the medication and kind of stabilize. But after 2 weeks, I was sent home, and I was very much alone and very much not well. So that's when I started trying to find different services and access different resources. But it was a slow grind. Those first couple of years were really brutal, right? But that's where a lot of my work is derived from, is like, I can help people with upper level kinds of creating change and stuff like that, like if we're refining how often you're going to the gym or your nutrition or all the rest of it. I'm trained in all of that. But my non-judgmental, unconditional regard kind of comes from like, I know what it's like to just try to like, do laundry or brush your teeth or have a shower or any of, excuse me, any of those really, really basic things. I know what it's like to be sitting in shame or judgment or discomfort or even fear, because when we're not able to take care of ourselves on those basic kind of levels, that there's a threat there, like that. Oh my God, I'm not okay, right? So that's kind of like the bottom in the trenches kind of experience that I've had, so that it kind of allows me to meet people wherever they're at. Most people tend to be a lot more functioning than that, but it is where my kind of non-judgmental approach comes from, because I've been to some places and I understand how difficult it can be there, and I would never judge anybody else for struggling with whatever it is that they're struggling with.
Well, I'm so surprised at the medical system that they know you're non communicative, you're having trouble just doing your basic necessities, such as cooking or doing laundry, and they send you home alone. That is shocking to me, but I don't really understand what else could have been done, or I just don't know what they're thinking doing that to someone. This is why a lot of times I think we end up with a lot of homeless folks. They just don't know
Yeah,
what to do. So I'm
that's
thankful
true.
that you're not like that.
I was really grateful because that's the thing. Everything else, I lost, like, I couldn't figure out like my accounts and everything, but I maintained access to my bank account and I prioritized paying the rent. So, but I have often thought about that time as, oh, I came so close. I came so close to being out on the street. But, I was lucky enough that I was able to continue to pay the rent. I put Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a triangle, and I printed that out, or I drew it out or something, and I put it on my fridge, and I just focused on that. Okay, like right now we're just the basic needs, food, shelter, clothes on our back. That's it. We're just there, and that was sort of like how was my model for rebuilding over the next couple of years. It's just like we're slowly moving up that triangle to more sophisticated kind of needs and care, right? But yeah, like that's the truth. That's the truth. I think a lot of people out there, it's just like they got to a place where it was overwhelming to even meet those basic needs, right? And then that is a difficulty within our society that I see all the time, is that once you get bumped out of that basic stability, so hard to get back in. right? Like, because if you don't have a phone or a roof over your head, you don't have access to those kinds of things. There's just everything else gets incrementally that much harder, right? So,
Right. You're
yeah,
absolutely spot on because once you're out there, no cell phone, no address. I mean, you can't even apply for a job
mhm,
because they want to know how to contact you and you have no way to be contacted.
yeah.
So I'm truly grateful you didn't get to that point, but I can see how scary it is, and I'm just so surprised they let you go home without just like a caregiver or somebody there for you.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes systems don't. I think systems fail people all the time, right? So.
Right.
But then, like I also see that as a place where, the coaching and the books that I've written and stuff like have a place because it's just like, I have that accessibility policy where I give free PDF copies of my books to anybody who can't afford it. Cause like, I know what it's like not to have access to resources based on your financial situation and stuff like that. Right. So, yeah,
That's super
I
wondrul of
like
you
to
to do.
you play the two truths and a lie game. I often play the if I was in charge of the world game. And when I run into things that like just really bother me and stuff, I say, well, if I was in charge of the world, it would be like this.
I like that game. Well, at some point, though, I'm sorry we went deep diving into all that personal trauma, but at some point, something shifted for you. It wasn't overnight, as you described, but a moment or a season where you started moving in a different direction. So, what does that turning point look like when you look back at it now?
I think there's been a resilience within me that I really appreciate. And even in my darkest hour where I have parts that have given up, there's always a part of me that has a life force and like I'm just, it is, I thought of that breakdown. My whole life, things have happened and I just got back up, and I've refused to let those things define me. And I've refused to, stay in bitterness or anything else is going to take away my ability to actually enjoy life, right? So it's just be like, okay, all right, that sucked. Let's try again. Let's learn from what and let's try again. And that's kind of been a beautiful gift I've had my whole life. But the when I had the breakdown, like I couldn't get back up. That was the problem. I sometimes I think of it as a like a bouncy ball that's been bouncing, and then all of a sudden it gets flat. It just sits there,
Runs out
stopped
of air.
bouncing, right? And like so it just took a while, but what I can recognize is that energy, that get back up energy, it was still there. It was just very, very muted. And it took a lot of work. And it did find connecting myself with some resources to slowly start to have that energy of like, okay, we're starting to stand back up. We're standing back up. And now, now I live life. I'm in the world very differently. I'm not so bouncy, but I absolutely have joy and energy and my quality of life, I think is better than it's ever been before. And, it took a long time to get from that flat affect to actually being able to feel the joy and the gratitude. And, unfortunately, that also means feeling the grief and the pain and and all the rest of that stuff. But we're a package deal, I often think of it like it's the sun and the moon, right? We all want to hold on to the sunshine, but the moon and the darkness, that's a part of it too, right? So,
Right.
on a daily basis, I try to make peace with that's what it's like to be human is to embody all of that, right? So, but I think from that, I have a quality of life now that I wouldn't have had if that stuff didn't happen, right? But yeah, just that I think that like just that I don't know, there was something in me, because I was at the end definitely when that breakdown happened. I was just like, oh, I don't. Once again, I was just not sure how I could possibly go on. But something did, something would pick up the phone and call some numbers and try to find some help. And something kept showing up at therapy week after week. And something got, it's like, okay, I'll go to these groups that they're offering, and I'm like, okay, I'll try to reduce the substances by just a tiny little bit. And like, okay, I'll try to eat like once a day or something, like there's something within me that has always continued to and that I talk about that with people too, because sometimes we believe ourselves when we say we give up, right? But I look at my own history and I think, okay, so yeah, you hit those places. You think that you've given up. So then you kind of go about destroying everything. But it turns out you didn't really give up. And eventually the future you has to deal with the mess that the present you made. So now I've caught on. So when I'm in that, like, kind of give up or setback place or anything like that, I try to do as little damage or make as little of a mess as possible, because I recognize that eventually I'm going to get back on track. So, let's not make a huge mess that I have to clean up. Let's not destroy all the progress that I have made, and all of us as adults. It's just like nobody else is going to come along and clean up the mess that we made. So, I like to think that it's like, if I got to throw something, I'll throw a pillow instead of a rock, because it does a lot less damage, right?
Right. Well, I like your analogy of the sun, the moon, and the stars being a package deal. I like that because you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's also cyclical, and you need both of them. I mean, if you had sun all day long, you would burn. And if you had night, you wouldn't be able to just move around. I mean, it would be just too dark if you had no light at all. And the stars, they're out some nights and not others. So I like that analogy. You must use that in your framework.
I definitely do. Right. It's been a way for me to understand things about myself, but also help clients and stuff like that as well, right? So
Right. So before you had your language of the framework, when you were still in the middle of everything, pulling yourself out of the trenches, what did trying to get better actually feel like from the inside? And what were you telling yourself?
well, after the breakdown, it was pretty hard. I don't know. It really made a difference that I had that counselor who believed in me. Like the first time I went to see her, I was just like such a mess. And I'm not really one to even cry in front of people, but I was just like, my face was leaking so badly. And I was just like, so, and I know this is an actual counseling trick, right? Like, but it was genuine. And, like she leaned forward towards me. And that just symbolically was like, okay, you're in this with me, and you're going to help me. So, what it was like, it was it was just really trying to cope and trying to learn from the things that people were teaching me. I was fortunate enough to be in groups they were addiction based, but people had clued on enough into the more contemporary approaches that, like this is about mental health. So there was a lot of work about distorted thinking and how to derive real self-worth and other kinds of stuff like that. That was really helpful. So I just kept kind of learning, like how to put myself back together again, and be whole. And I learned a new understanding of what it means to be whole, like so many, I don't think I'm alone in the fact that I spent a lot of my life thinking that overcoming and being whole and being well meant getting rid of parts of myself that were unpleasant or unhelpful or undesirable, So, and then like what I really came to kind of understand is like, if you're trying to get rid of anything about you, that's going to create chaos inside, because it's going to cause resistance, right? Like, you're trying to get rid of me, right? Whereas when you embrace everything about yourself, right? It's just like, okay, yeah, I get you. You're there. You tried to help me in this way. That's not how we're going to do things anymore, but thank you. And you can be here too. And all these different aspects of ourselves, you can all be here. And I love you all unconditionally, but I'm going to steer the bus here. This is how we're going to do things, but no longer fighting with all of those parts or trying to eliminate them. It eases all the chaos and the disturbed nervous system that many of us have, right? Instead, we start to have real inner peace, because that, to me, that's what healing and wholeness is about learning how to be in relationship with the aspects of myself, right? It's kind of like, we laugh because we don't get to pick who our family is. We tend to pick who our friends are, but we don't necessarily get to pick everything that exists inside ourselves, but it is what's there. So making peace with it and learning how to be in harmony with it in my opinion, is a good strategy towards having a better life, right? I don't think that trying to fix, trying to judge, eliminate, or suppress things ever is going to work out in the way that we want it to.
Right. I used to tell my kids, you can't get away from yourself. You better like yourself because you're going to be stuck with yourself. That's it. I know the movie Freaky Friday and all those crazy switcheroo movies are fun and happy, but it doesn't happen. So you are who you are. Just like Popeye said, I am's what I am's.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Most people approach change the same way: decide, commit, push through. What did you have to unlearn about that before anything actually started to shift for you?
Well, I think what it really started with was like right before my breakdown. I thought I was finally at a place where I get to enjoy life. I had lost 80 pounds. I had learned how much I loved working out. I had started working out later in my 40s, and I just loved it, and yeah, I was like, I'd work out 6 days a week because I absolutely loved it, and with walks, and I had lost the 80 pounds very slowly, a pound to a pound and a half a week. So in a very healthy way. And I was consistent and persevered. And I had become a vegan, which was like thrilling to me because I'd never really believed in eating animals, but I always had because more of a laziness kind of thing than and a not knowing how to do it differently kind of thing. And I had put a lot of work into learning how to be a coach and getting ready to come up and be a coach. And so I started my coaching business, and I think I had about 10 clients, and I called myself a weight loss coach. I'm not sure that I really helped anybody lose very much weight, but I helped them all have better relationships with themselves, right? And
That's
change
super
how they
important.
treat. Yeah, right. So that was just like thrilling to me. I love doing that. I had always wanted a more meaningful career, and so I was doing that, and I had muscles, and I felt really good about myself, and all of these different, and I was married, and I was finally married, and I had more friends, and had 14 years clean. But if you can see what I'm saying, there was all these external metrics that were actually fueling why I felt so good about my life and why I felt so good about myself. And I didn't understand that it was all dependent on all those things. So as I started to get sick and those things started to fall off, and I was unable to maintain all of that stuff, and I lost the wife, and I lost the fitness routine, and I voluntarily let go of my clients because I no longer felt like I was in a position to help them with any kind of integrity or ethics. And so it all fell apart. And then my relationship with myself was worse than it had ever been. Like I was thrown back to when I was a teenager, and even worse, because all of my self-worth had been conditional on the things that I was doing. And that, in my opinion, is never a good idea, because what we're able to do can change in a heartbeat, whether we're in a car accident or whether we have a breakdown like that, or what, all of those external things, they are not within our control. We can have influence over them often, but at the end of the day, stuff can happen, right? In a heartbeat. So I think that was a real part of this change thing that you questioned, that you asked me, is that to learn how to derive my own self-worth just from me as a human being without the doing anything, right? Like just sitting here in this moment doing absolutely nothing. I am worthy and deserving of my own love. So then the creating change and becomes a place of choice, not I have to feel good about myself, or have to live up to other people's expectations or anything like that. Like if I'm working on losing weight again. And it's actually really difficult, but I keep coming back to my whys, and my whys are about health. They're about health, and they're about what I want. And I don't have to be miserable while I wait to lose the weight that I want, because I already love myself. I'm already in a place of like, all right, okay, you look a little lumpy in the mirror, and I don't particularly like that, but I still love you, right? I love you, and I got your back, right? So then all these different things, like, eating better, going to the gym, going for walks, drinking more water, prioritizing rest, all of the stuff that goes into trying to lose weight, is all coming from a place of choice. And my self-worth is not tied up into it. So it changes the whole pressure and approach to creating that change, right? Like, because
Right.
it's a bonus, right? Like, I'm doing this because I want to, not because I need to. I mean, I kind of need to for my health, but like not in a tied up in your self-worth kind of thing, right? And then just me also coming to understand that perfectionism is impossible. And I used to always, like, have the bar set so high and think I had to do things perfectly, and because I actually thought that was smart and wise and strategic, but when I came to realize that perfect is impossible, it's just like, wow, you've been trying to do something a way that is actually impossible. So whereby you actually wanted to do it the best way and the most efficient way, you were actually choosing a way that is, like, up there with fairy tales. It's not going to happen. So what if we use that same desire to do things strategically and efficiently, and understand, like, hey, okay, change is going to be a journey like this, and it's going to have some winding backs and stuff like that. So I have a much better understanding of it, right? Like, and
Right.
like, even with the food, right? If I shoot for 80% eating on point, that allows 20% whatever, because whatever happens, right? And there's a lot more freedom with self. There's more quality of life, because